You guys want to come down and see it?
You can learn a lot about a place by walking down one street.
It's hard to stay away from it, you know, when it's your whole life.
Not just what was lost,
It's like 4th of July up in here.
but also what was saved.
A little bit of luck.
God.
It was one of the strangest questions ever asked on the story.
How do you define what 5 o'clock is?
And we may finally have an answer. And what do you do when you get 9 hours at home after fighting fires for 62 hours straight? You hug them as tight as you can. Here's the story. All right, hey guys, I'm Dan Haggerty. Welcome to the story. I am reading your messages, of course, and your emails, and we're starting tonight by addressing some of them. Now, if you watch the story, you know how important our viewers are to the success of this show and what you have to say. You really do guide the ship, so please keep sharing your thoughts and your curiosity on my Facebook page. You can email us too at thestory@kgw.com or use Twitter in the hashtag #HeyDan. Now, it has been a week since these fires exploded across the West Coast. We've been hearing tons of difficult and heartbreaking stories from people who have lost everything but the clothes they were wearing. Stories about firefighters choking on this hazardous air while they work on the front lines to protect towns like Estacada, for instance, from approaching flames. Now, despite all of that, we've been getting dozens of emails, not about the fires, but about what was happening right before they broke out. Gene Putnam sent this email in. I've been getting a ton of these. I mean, I got one just before the show. Gene said, with the fires at the forefront, there's been next to no news about the downtown Portland protests and riots. Have they stopped? So, since so many people have asked, we figured we'd just go ahead and take a look. Obviously, now we can't rule out every instance of somebody holding up a sign and making their voice heard, but I'm going to assume that most of these emails are from people who are asking about the more rowdy protests, you know, the ones that often end with clashes between police, protesters, and rioters. So we're going to debut a new segment here on The Story, and it's a question. Were there clashes between protesters and police last night? And the answer is no. It's no. Yeah, that's the biggest font we have. The answer is no. Coincidentally enough, though, actually, just as it's been a week since these fires kicked up, it's also been a week since Portland police recorded any arrests at a protest. The video you're looking at here was last Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Groups marched through downtown Portland for a few hours. Police ended up arresting 11 people. They say for blocking streets and throwing things at cops. Now, since then, we haven't seen any large gatherings or clashes, and none have been organized. But we're going to have to wait, of course, and see what happens when the smoke finally clears. Okay, now let's go to our big story. If you follow me on social media, you know on Sunday night I posted on Facebook that I was headed to Estacada, a town that right now is still smoldering. I wanted to connect with people and share their stories, so I started my week with them on Monday morning. I do want to thank everybody who helped kind of comment and tag their friends and let them know I was coming. Helped me meet some really amazing people there, because we went back behind the fire lines with neighbors who are still in a stage 3 evacuation, and your feedback led me directly to this story, which I think sums up the people of Estacada pretty well and the nightmare they're sharing. Sometimes you can tell the story of an entire community on just one street, but you need the right guide. Ours was known simply as Bonsai, a welcoming person on a road that's grown wary of strangers.
This is our spread right over here. You can see right in the corner between the barn and the house, a huge shipping container storage shed thing melted.
There's little hot spots burning everywhere. Oh, yo, this house is okay.
And all the forest right there was on fire, and it stopped right at our doorstep.
The first doorstep he took us to
The miracle is how the fire came right up to the edge of his yard over here.
belonged to another person with just one name, Nako.
It's hard to stay away from it, you know, when it's your whole life.
I should probably mention he's a famous musician and headman for Nako and Medicine for the People, a band with tens of millions of plays on Spotify.
So that's my house right up there, and the fire came and stopped right here along the path.
And he nearly lost everything.
Fucking like 4th of July up in here.
Wow, look at that fire.
Nako didn't evacuate right away, decided instead for sleepless nights trying to protect his place.
There, you can see the stacks of buckets all over the place. There's one right around the corner too. Buckets and jugs of water that we were filling up from this little pond over here.
It's a tiny ass pond, just like the size of a kiddie pool.
Amazing how quickly you use your bucket.
They're not sure how much the buckets helped, but The home was spared.
Yeah.
This is very close to my house. It's probably about 100 yards away. Yeah.
Did you feel like you dodged a bullet here? Because I feel like that bullet came pretty close.
Oh, absolutely.
3 houses on the street did burn. Bonsai led us to one of them, a property at the end of the road, and an owner who's trying to make sense of what's left.
And burned everything. The boat melted. We had a car in the garage. It's sitting underneath that rubble there. You can kind of see the boat trailer inside the rubble there.
Eric told me the fire moved in so quickly that evacuation orders jumped from 1 to 3, and he left without grabbing anything.
Oh, it was unbelievably hot.
The fire took everything he owned, except for an unlikely blessing. I cannot believe that home you're building is standing.
How? We can walk down there. I'll show you the fire that went around it. You can see the fire came all the way through here. And all the way around.
The framework of his dream house, built by his own hands, hardly has a scratch, even as the home next door burned to ash. Even this fallen tree refused to hit the wall as it crashed down. What do you, just a little bit of luck.
God, it wasn't supposed to burn. How could it not? It's all kiln-dried lumber. It's ready to go up like a match. And it didn't burn. And everything else did. I can't explain it. It was a miracle, an absolute miracle.
And while Eric leans on faith, the street relies on each other.
We all need to hold each other up and say, we're here for you. And
We have a tight little community in this neighborhood.
Bonsai sent out a neighborhood text when the flames got close.
I wrote to them, hey everyone, I'm so sorry to say that it seems like the worst case scenario is here. All the fire trucks are parked here in town. It seems like they had to retreat. Sorry for the bad news, everyone. Let's stay in touch.
I'll be the earth that ground you from the chaos all around. I'll be the home you return to. I can be your middle ground.
It's been an emotional experience.
As a reminder.
Not necessarily sad, a lot like some of Nako's music. There's a hopeful sense on this street, and with the people living on it, that soon the smoke will clear for a better path through Estacada. I should mention a very talented photographer here at KGW, Kurt Austin, worked on that piece with me, and I want to thank everybody who you met in it who opened up and let us into their lives during this very vulnerable time. If you think that there's a story that we need to tell, that you want me to know about, you know how to find me. Just use that hashtag, #HeyDan. All right, Matthew Shapiro emailed a good question into us, and I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds right now. Can we drink Portland city water with all the smoke and the particles in the air from the fire? For the answer, we headed right to the website of the Portland Water Bureau, and right there at the top is the reassuring answer. Your tap water, it says, is safe to drink. And then they went further into the details to explain why. See, first, there hasn't been any noticeable ashfall in the Bull Run watershed management area, and that's where we pull most of our tap water. Besides, any of the ash that would fall would likely be diluted by the sheer volume of water there. Finally, the water system pulls from the lower parts of the reservoir, not the surface where anything might fall and kind of float on the top. And this is great news because with all of the smoky air that's out there right now, drinking a lot of water is really important. Hey, let's take a minute. Talk about the election for a second. It turns out that the Oregon voter pamphlet will in fact feature a GOP party statement after all. You probably remember last week we told you about how the Oregon GOP sued the Secretary of State's office because it initially rejected their party statement from the voter guide because they submitted it late. It was due at 5 p.m. on August 25th, and the Secretary of State says that they got it at 5 o'clock and 29 seconds. They're sticklers over there. Republicans argued that they didn't get it on time, that they actually did get it on time, but that the website gave them problems, and a judge agreed. See, the judge said that the GOP did their portion before 5, and that the more important area is when the state actually processed it, and that was kind of on them. One of the Republicans' arguments was an interesting one. They wanted to know, what exactly is 5 o'clock anyway? And the Oregon Secretary of State, Bev Clarno's answer to them is our quote of the day. She said, I still believe that 5 p.m. is 5 p.m. Clarno is a Republican, we have to mention. Her office is appealing the ruling to get some more clarification so that this doesn't happen again. But it will allow the GOP to print their statement. When this lawsuit was first filed, a lawyer for the Republican Party claims it's common practice for parties to wait until the very last minute to file their statements.
This is done because as soon as you file your voter's pamphlet statement, it's a matter of public record. And another party may choose to amend what they're going to file or file something new before the deadline to respond to whatever the Oregon Republican Party's communication was.
So after we first reported that, a lot of you were curious. You wondered, so when did the Democrats submit their voter pamphlet statement? Was it up to the last minute? We asked the party, we asked the Secretary of State, and neither of them told us, just that it was on time. But I'm still curious, all right? So I'm going to keep asking questions. I'm also curious how many of you were around the last time a gigantic natural disaster left the Northwest covered in ash. When the story continues, we're going to dip into the vault and Matt Safino's brain to see how these fires compare to the ash from Mount St. Helens. Plus,
take me out to the fire, take me out to the line.
Little downtime after working real hard for us, and they should only really be worried about suppressing fires. But on top of putting their lives on the line, they're also trying to stop the spread of rumors, too.
It's a handful of idiots and Mother Nature.
Welcome back to the story. I hope you had a fantastic commercial break. Lots of questions coming into the hashtag #HeyDan about our awful air quality. And it is awful, isn't it? Actually reminded a viewer, Marianne Fitzgerald, of another disaster of Northwest history. And she asked, how does the air quality today compare with the air quality in 1980? When Mount St. Helens erupted? It's a great question. So we spent a lot of time, if you've been watching the show, in the KGW Vault this year, talking about Mount St. Helens. It's because this May was the 40th anniversary of the eruption, which also dumped a plume of smoke over the Northwest. The column of smoke actually shot up about 80,000 feet and touched down on 11 states and 2 provinces. Hey, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino right now. He knows more about this than most people, I would say. It's kind of an interesting comparison. We've been thinking mostly about fires when comparing it to what's happening right now, but do you have any insight on how it compares to the eruption of Mount St. Helens?
You know, I'm glad Marianne asked this question because it's something I've been thinking about over the last few days, but I haven't had the time to really dig into it. So it is an interesting comparison, one that is very, of course, on point here in the Pacific Northwest. So there are differences between volcanic ash plumes and wildfire smoke. There are actually some fairly big differences. For one thing, the wildfire smoke, the particulates, sorry about the typo there, the particulates are much finer. It's the 2.5 microns or smaller that we've been talking about, whereas a lot of the particulates that come out of volcanic eruptions are bigger, and therefore they fall out or precipitate out a lot faster, which in a way is a good thing. I mean, back in 1980, people kept having to sweep the sidewalks and wash their cars off and all of that, but they were also putting masks on. They were even putting masks on their pets, as I recall, back in those days. So it is an interesting comparison for sure. The volcanic plumes, however, oftentimes contain silicas, which can be very, very harmful. Those are basically small glass-like pieces of rock, similar, in fact, the same thing as to what causes black lung disease in coal miners. So when the coal miners break up rock, it creates a dust, they inhale it in their lungs, and those fine particles can basically cause scar tissue in the lungs. So volcanic eruptions also contain that. However, back in 1980, Portlanders' exposure to those silicas wasn't believed to be long enough or heavy enough to cause that kind of health issue as well. I think we have some video for you again of the eruption or of Mount St. Helens. This, I believe, is pre-eruption when it was just beautifully shaped, very symmetrical cinder cone, and then it started to do that, and the rest, of course, is all history. But the images, you know, we never get tired of looking at that. So to summarize it, Dan, the wildfire smoke, because it contains these small particles that hang in the air a lot longer, can create some really bad air quality. But when you see images of that contains everything, small and large particles. And that created some big-time air quality issues, not only in Portland, but all around the Northwest. But the heavier stuff falls out faster. So there are some differences. You don't want to be breathing either of them for very long if you can help it. Dan?
Yeah, good point. How about let's not breathe in either? But it's interesting to look back at history and get that comparison, Matt. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Now, look, if you at home watch this show regularly, you know that I can rant from time to time, especially when I'm passionate about something. Some viewers even call me #RantyDan, which is something I take as a compliment, all right? But this next guy, I think, gives me a little run for my money. Kristen Severance talked to TJ Heiner, an Oregon man fighting wildfires and misinformation at the same time.
This is my crew. We are grizzly firefighters, and we're out in Spike Camp, reaching you through Zoom.
This is the first time wildland firefighter TJ Heiner has had service since his Facebook video debunking the conspiracy theories Antifa started these wildfires went viral. The FBI and multiple law enforcement agencies have said that is untrue. Heiner thought maybe people would believe someone actually fighting the fires.
And Antifa's not running through the woods. Those guys don't even want to leave their skateboards. We got fires starting 30 miles out in the woods, and you want to blame Boogaloo and Antifa?
Heiner is a character, and his crew is too. Here they are singing after days of fighting fires.
Take me out to the fire. Take me out to the line.
But his message is serious. Stop spreading misinformation.
And I'm not a huge fan of social media. I'm not really social, and I'm not very media-wise. I'm really good with chainsaws, and I'm really good with these guys. But I got off the fire that morning after we'd busted our butt and eaten so much smoke, and just was tagged in posts about sky lasers and Antifa and BLM and Boogaloo. It's not organized terrorism. It's a handful of idiots and Mother Nature. So I just wanted to speak our truth.
Hello, Facebook.
The video, now set to private because of some of the threats he received, has been viewed 500,000 times.
Is there something you wish you would have said in the video?
Yeah, there are arsonists. There are arsonists. You look into those people, they've got multiple drug arrests. These people, you know, if you take a minute, first of all, and look at where the information is coming from, you know, you can put your political perspective on any sort of information. We've always had arsonists. We've always had people who wanted to go out and create more chaos. But to put it as an organized terroristic faction, that's not what we're seeing. I mean, there's no crazies out here running in the woods other than us. And we're out here trying to put the fires down. So, you know, it's just shocking to see that people are so willing to, you know, bite that bait and run with it.
I asked Heiner his thoughts on at least 2 Clackamas County Sheriff's employees on video spreading this rumor. This deputy,
Antifa mother, okay, right, are out causing hell.
And this captain during a public meeting.
Groups, it's not confirmed Antifa, but suspected Antifa. This is more specific to the Estacada area. Reports and sightings of people armed with chainsaws. And the goal was to fall telephone poles in hopes of starting further fires.
Again, the sheriff has said that's false.
There are people across the board who eat the bait. And there are firefighters who believe that. There are police officers who believe that. There's obviously people within society that believe that. And they've got to face their own repercussions. And it sounds like, you know, from what the articles I've seen, you know, a lot of the people are, you know, being suspended and losing their jobs for passing out misinformation. You as a public servant, I as a public servant have a responsibility to speak the most truth that I can.
Misinformation online can have consequences in the real world. Reports of people not leaving their homes in Estacada for fear Antifa is in the area. The Clackamas County Sheriff confirmed armed citizens set up an illegal checkpoint to stop cars in Clackamas County. And it's causing families of firefighters to worry even more.
Well, on top of the fact that my wife is messaging me and she's concerned that we've got crazy people out here trying to, you know, for lack of a better word, hurt us and them. You know, we've got, there was a level 3 evacuation for my house. Mr. Feldy's house right here, we're not even sure if it's still there. He lives in Happy Camp. Mr. Burkhart here, his house was a level 3 evacuation as well. And, you know, the whole time we're doing our jobs, our families are being ran out. And the information that's coming is, well, you've got terrorists out there attacking you. And it's like, It's scary enough already to scare my family.
I wish we could hire you to just debunk all misinformation because you are great.
And we're just out here living our truth, boss.
Kristen Severance, KGW News.
Gotta live the truth. Hey, we've got another firefighter shout out after the break. Plus, some of the comments you have to the hashtag #HeyDan. We're gonna finish the story next. Time for a shout out. We want to give one to Lieutenant Dale Cook with the Clackamas County Fire District. This is a picture of him and his 2 boys after Dale had finally come home after working for 62 hours straight. He was only home for 9 hours. I'd have spent it all sleeping. Actually, you know what? I'd have spent it the same way as you see here. You got to make them count. He spent last week working the fire lines near Estacada, keeping people there safe. Huge thank you to him. Enjoy that big hug. Today also happens to be Dale's wedding anniversary, and he's going to be spending it working. Thank you for the sacrifice, sir. Appreciate it. If you want to shout out a firefighter or a first responder in your life, we really want to help you brag. So email us a picture, a little bit about them. Tell us, give us their story to thestory@kgw.com. You can email us there or tweet us using the hashtag #HeyDan. All right, got a couple of comments. JJ Nudnik wrote in about 6 minutes into the show and said, since the fires, I've not heard anything about protests or riots. Have they stopped? You tuned in 6 minutes too late. We actually talked about that in the first couple minutes of the show. So if you ever miss this or you tune in late, you don't have it DVR'd, all of our episodes, as soon as it's over, you can find them on the KGW YouTube channel. It's really easy. Hop on there and check them out. Emily Johnson wrote in and said, hey, Dan, make the weather and fire experts give us their opinions on how long we should expect smoke-filled air. Days, weeks, month. I'm not going into the Weather Center and picking a fight with Matt Safino. I can't make him do anything. I think he might be tougher than me. But I did ask him nicely, and he told me that probably Thursday into Friday. Of course, that continues to change. If you remember earlier in the week, it was expected to get out of here a little earlier than that. So basically with the weather, this sort of thing, we just have to keep paying attention to it. As things change, we will let you know. But right now it looks like late Thursday into Friday. Keep those questions coming. Keep helping us kind of steer this ship here on The Story. We appreciate all of your insight and feedback. That's going to do it for us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Story.